Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final episode of this season's Last Call. Our guest today, Mr. Kazim Saeed, he wears many hats and wears them all well. He's a consultant, an author, and perhaps most importantly in today's circumstances, a leading voice in sustainable agriculture. He works at the intersection of farming, climate resilience, and long term food security through the groundbreaking Pakistan Agricultural Coalition that was set up by the leading business houses of this country, for which he serves as CEO. As pressures of water scarcity, soil degradation, and productivity mount, working diligently in this field is more important than ever. Join us as we reflect on sustainable solutions to help farmers adapt to climate change, the policy changes they'll need for support, and why we must act now. Kazim Saab, welcome to the show.
Be here.
So I'm going to just really literally go into the basics, and I want our audience to kind of understand from the ground up. First off, what the Pakistan Agricultural Coalition is, and more importantly, where did the idea come from?
Well, the idea came from the feeling in the corporate sector that agriculture is too important for this country's future, and we can't leave it to only the government. Of course, the government plays a very important role, but the corporate sector felt that there should be demand-driven business models that can actually focus on growth, investment, and improvement of farming practices, etc. And so in 2013, 20 of the largest business groups of Pakistan were pulled together by Mr. Rashid Anwar and a couple of us, myself and Mr. Arif Nadeem, who was former Secretary of Agriculture in Punjab, former Secretary of Irrigation in Punjab. And we pulled these groups together to develop a non-profit that's going to work on business models for growth in agriculture and advise government and donors on it. And we built some of these business models for crop insurance, for collateralized lending to farmers, for bringing mechanization to farmers through service providers, etc., etc. And we also produce a lot of analytical work for policymakers to understand how to chart the future of agriculture.
Would you be comfortable sharing some of the names of the business houses that have been a part of, bringing this all together?
Yeah, sure. The list is, actually, I'm proud to say that most of our patrons have been patrons right from day one until now. Usually, a lot of nonprofits have a lot of turnover, from Engro to Fatma Group, as well as Nishat Group and Sapphire and Jaffer Brothers, KNNs, National Foods. These leading businesses either are selling products and services to growers, including banks like HBL, Allied Bank, etc., or they're purchasing products and services from growers as textile players, or as we have Thal Industries, a number of these players. TPL Insurance is an insurer that's very keen to move, and they've worked a great deal with us on crop insurance as well. So the list is available for you to see.
I think it's all the heavyweights that we have in the country, all with, more importantly, stellar reputations. And I think very relevant to, I think it's the most relevant topic of our time. Food security, to my mind, today is national security. And I think as we been discussing over the past 2 days at the Breathe conference as well, we're actually possibly, an agri economy that's a net importer now. So from a PAC lens, can you share with us any projects or success stories that that have happened since its inception?
Well, one of the things that we worked on a lot is how to change the way after the crop leaves the farm, how it moves through the supply chain, what prices the farmer gets, how the farmer is treated at that time. And one of the key things is the ability of the farmer to get credit for the next crop. Because the farmer in these supply chains, the farmer is the only stakeholder who needs money right away. So we worked a great deal on a mechanism for delivering credit to farmers, which is called electronic warehouse receipts. It is a way to take the farmer's crop, which is also the farmer's asset, and place it in a warehouse operated by a company that you and I can trust, and more importantly, banks can trust. And against the 100 rupees value of crop sitting in a warehouse like that, banks are happy to give 70 rupees in loans, which is often enough for the next crop to get moving. And this regime, we worked for years and years on this, worked with leading players to come up with the pilots for this. National Foods did a lot of the initial work with us on this, and Agility and SGS on the testing side. Then we came up with the entire regime for it, with the regulations, working with SECP, with the IFC, which is part of the World Bank Group. International experts came in there, the State Bank, came up with the whole ecosystem, and we raised money for the enabling entity for this ecosystem from leading business groups of Pakistan. That's called Nemat Collateral, and they accredit warehouses. So any accredited warehouse product goes in, and within hours, often the loans are dispersed. So this electronic warehouse cease regime has gone through about 8 seasons. Some 10 billion rupees worth of lending has happened, and none of the banks have lost money or anything. And HBL and the Bank of Punjab have been the leading lenders. And Interloop is one of the groups that has a warehousing company called Momentum Logistics, which is one of the players here. And a number of others. 4G Fertilizers is coming as well. And the total amount of commodity that has passed through the system is about 25 billion rupees worth. And now we are working with the State Bank of Pakistan and other players to chart the scale up of this with large scale investment in warehousing. So this is one of the things that it takes time for these things to develop. But we've stuck it out and run the course with it.
Mr. Kazim, I also want to walk back into your years of experience. I know you've been at some of the largest multilaterals in the world, including the World Bank Group. So how does that experience really tie into your current work with PAC? And how do you see that experience helping you scale up your initiatives here?
Well, I think it helps immensely in imagining how sectors like, for example, the wheat sector in Pakistan, which is really the talk of the entire agriculture sector these days. The wheat harvest is on, and the government intends for it to go through deregulation. Now, how do you imagine a deregulated wheat sector, and how would it practically work? And what are the investments required? What is the global experience? This is where I feel my international experience informs the kind of advice we give the government in the agriculture sector. So, for example, if we say the country should have a deregulated wheat sector, well, how would price be determined in a deregulated sector? How would government's goals of making sure farmers get enough of a fair profit, but also on the other end of the supply chain, end consumers don't find roti to be too expensive, and these are policy goals for the government. How do you make sure that there isn't an immense amount of hoarding and abuse of a deregulated sector where market forces are supposed to apply? Well, then global experience says that you need the soft infrastructure as well as the hard infrastructure of a deregulated sector. You can't just say whatever the administrative way that the sector was working, with government dominating every link in the chain, that will be the way things will remain, but we are going to deregulation. You can't possibly achieve that. So we have worked a great deal on the soft infrastructure, the pricing side, working with the Pakistan Mercantile Exchange on trading of commodities, agri-commodities, and also on the hard infrastructure, gone very deep into how a modern warehousing, including silo warehousing, can be brought to Pakistan and at large scale, and advising the government on that. So imagining how physically, practically, and in economic terms, a new reform sector can work, this really is the benefit, I think, of having that international experience.
I think I wasn't intending on asking this question, but now that you've said it, what is your perspective on the possible incoming wheat crisis, and what would you do hypothetically as a policymaker to kind of soften the blow?
Well, uh, you're calling it an incoming wheat crisis. I think a lot of farmers would call it the current wheat crisis. It's not incoming anymore. Things are really in difficulty in the wheat supply chain. Um, I think that we could have planned a little better to deliver a sector in which, if government wants to achieve its goals of stabilizing price in a range, and you can, some people argue that government should not do that. I say, well, it's government's prerogative to come up with the policy goals that it does come up with. So once it defines the policy goal that there is a range in which we would like price to be, there are ways that they have to operate to achieve those goals. And
Yeah.
for example, there is a certain amount of wheat government can purchase and make sure that the market knows, traders and others know that government will act. Government will start selling if the price, starts rising too much. Government will start selling at the target price, or government will start purchasing if the price starts falling. These are ways that you manage the world over. This is done. Even in developed economies, this is done. So if the government could do that and clarify that, give the right signals to the market can operate openly. But if we take the medieval systems or medieval practices of saying you cannot sell your wheat at the price other than the one I say, that's a medieval way of doing it, where where government officials will go and take over your wheat or tell you this is the price you'll sell at. You can't operate an enormous sector the way we have right in the country. Pakistan is number 8 or 9 in the world in terms of wheat output. So this is one of the world's largest wheat crops. You can't manage it with administratively and sending people out to confiscate and force prices. You can't do that. So you need a transition, and you need to plan that transition, make sure everybody understands where we're going. And there needs to be clarity about what will happen if somebody is taking advantage of the way the sector is beginning to work. In the end, I think there is an argument to be made about opening up the international trade, import and export of wheat. There are so many products for which it's open, and sector managers. There are plenty of cautions and safeguards that need to go in, and some regulatory practices that have to be applied. Many people think that a country like Pakistan, with the kind of state we have, with the kind of government mindset we have, it's not possible to have a real open market for something as important as wheat. Perhaps. But the pendulum shouldn't swing in the other direction to a level where we are trying to operate such an enormous sector with the medieval mindset. That's also not possible.
Of course, and other than just the medieval mindset, it's a problem that across Pakistan, not just in the agri space, we see this medieval mindset swinging like a pendulum. So you could have very frequent changes, and I think that, to my mind, is possibly the biggest impediment of our growth, generally speaking. And I see that overall in the climate sector, and of course, agriculture is the greatest portion of our GDP, the greatest portion of our mass employment in this country, and yet we've just not been able to figure it out for decades and decades now. Really enjoyed this session that was really focusing on agriculture, food security, and climate resilience. Kazim Saab, can I first just ask you to maybe summarize for our TV audience your thoughts and key takeaways from it?
Sure. I actually second what you're saying. I really enjoyed the conference. As a knowledge partner, Pakistan Agriculture Coalition helped focus on the agriculture, food security, and climate resilience session. And, we did a lot of homework before the session with each of the panelists to work out. And the keynote speaker, Dr. Zilaf Munir from English Biscuit and Pakistan Business Council. She's also our patron at Pakistan Agriculture Coalition. We did a lot of work with all of them in anticipation of this session to make sure that on the crop side, we had farmer representing what farmers go through, input supplier there from Syngenta, and also from the dairy sector, from 4G Fresh and Freeze, etc. Now, and with international experience from the Food and Agriculture Organization, James Okoth, and we had from the World Food Program, Coco Shiyama and General Shahid Nazir from Green Pakistan Initiative. On the finance side, we also had Mr. Kashif Tanvi, who's building the largest equity fund for agriculture, $50 million worth with Acumen Fund. So the key thing that I think in talking about climate resilience, still, just like when you talk normally about agricultural development and improvement of livelihoods, seed is where it all starts. And the good news is that heat-resistant corn seed, hybrid corn seed, which is heat-resistant, those varieties already have been introduced to Pakistan, and our farmers are using them, and they've responded well to them. So seed was a great key theme, improved seed for our farmers that can deal with wetter climates, that can deal with the drought, heat resistance, etc. So that was one theme. Another one was, well, we can't stop climate change, and farmers are dealing with the impacts of climate change, and we need to at least help them deal with the financial impact of climate change on their crops. And there, a number of the speakers talked about a national crop insurance scheme that's really overdue for Pakistan. There is crop loan insurance to those who borrow, but only maybe less than 20% of Pakistan's farmers actually have direct loans from banks. So we need a national crop insurance scheme. Another point was about the dairy sector, which I think is very important. The point about how the country needs to set the genetic direction of the overall herd that we have across the country and see which varieties, which breeds need to be encouraged further so that we improve our genetic pool. This was a very important point, and also formalization of the dairy supply chain. On water, there was very important point made about how the solar, providing solar to tube wells, it's very good for farmers because the cost of electricity is very high for them to running the tube wells, but it is just going without, is happening without much focus on the withdrawal of water that we are doing from the Indus aquifer below the rivers we have, and that's withdrawal is faster than the recharge. And this, solarization of tube wells is impacting that. One other idea I would mention that was raised there was for a specialized agri-credit entity backed by the government, which many countries have agriculture lending banks, including developed countries, developing countries, etc. Finally, I would say the point made about how with all the enormous fragmentation of our agricultural landscape into much smaller and smaller farms, some way of aggregating farmers together through cooperatives, through other ways to bring them together and have some market power and have economies of scale. This is very important. If you look to the East, many countries in east of us, including in East Asia, have very small acreages just like us. But this way of doing some either cooperative farming or other ways of aggregating have been encouraged. And this is important for Pakistan. So some very key ideas that talk about dealing with the impacts of climate change on agriculture and our food security.
How do you actually see this whole space evolving? Because I feel like with climate change, we're actually discouraging farmers to be farmers.
Yeah, I think it's alarming where we are. Not only where we stand today, but if you look at projections for our major crops that impact our food security, if we continue with the speed with which we are improving yields, which is very, very slow for wheat, for example, we may be looking at 6 or 7 million tons of wheat imported every year in a decade. 10 years from now, each year we may be importing 6 or 7 million tons a year. This is about in the range of $3 billion a year. These are numbers our country cannot afford today. And this mainly is driven by population increase. The climate change and population increase is going faster than the increase of our yields. So this is not the way I think we can build a future which can be sustainable for Pakistan and for our people. The way things ought to happen is that this part of the world, our country, should be the breadbasket for the Gulf And this has been said for so long. But the way things are moving, the way our farmers are finding costs rising to a level where they're hardly able to make a buck, given that yields are very low as well. Yields are not going up fast enough. We are really placing our food security future in peril as well. What to say of food security for other countries in the region, which are importing from Gulf countries are importing these grains and their products from Brazil, from New Zealand. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. So for our farmers and for our macroeconomic balance, I think these next 10 years, they have to be about agriculture, improving where we stand.
I'm going to now delve into, moving away from the banker and going into his world as a writer. I believe he's written an award-winning book called Do Pakistan, Har Pakistani Gharane Tak Khushhali, on the economic disparity in Pakistan and uplifting Pakistani households. I think that's something that really writes home for most of this country. So can you talk a bit about, the book, the genesis of it, the message you really wanted to convey? I'll give you some time for this. I know you'll have a lot to say.
So thank you very much for talking about Do Pakistan. My book basically asks the question, what proportion of Pakistani households do you expect will see their next generation doing better than this generation? And the answer, I've tried to argue through looking at many data sets and making those arguments for health, education, population growth, etc., is only 15 to 20% of Pakistani households can expect confidently that the next generation will do better than this one. And more recent data from, I think, from BIS particularly, which hasn't been fully put out by the government yet, it seems to show that the number may be lower than that. The last few years have been rough for all Pakistanis. So the book basically is about how to change that, how to make sure that these, it's sort of two countries, really, the way I see it. Those who are a country of those who are inside what I call the castle of prosperity of Pakistan, and those who are outside the castle walls, castle of prosperity. And a lot of it has to do with, in the 21st century, education and the quality of education. I happen to chair the board of the Idare-e-Talim o Agahi, which is one of the leading non-profits focused on school education in the country. And our surveys, the ASAR survey, year after year, the ASAR survey shows that the quality of education being absorbed by those who are actually going to school is a lot lower than what you would expect. And so the challenge in education in the 21st century, that's really the way you can reduce poverty. This side, I'm talking about topics related to poverty and its reduction. On the other side, the second half of the book is about something we don't talk about enough or understand enough in Pakistan, which is economic growth. And the key messages there are about entering Pakistan's economy, entering sectors that are more productive and therefore have higher paying jobs, which our people can do, rather than the brain drain where more qualified people go to other countries to work in more productive sectors. We need to introduce those sectors right here. And that's how economic growth happens, where you go up that ladder of going from, say, rice production or cement production or, these commodities, all the way up to producing computer chips, etc. This is just common wisdom in the area of economic development, but it's something that's not part of our national discourse yet. And this is one of the things I try to focus on in getting the messages out. The English translation of the book with all updated data is ready and is now talking to publishers for that. So that should be out soon.
I mean, I'd love to read it, and I'm not sure if I can digest it, because it seems like you're painting a very real picture of our future. And it's unfortunate that at times, all the data leads to something that is not, not very uplifting. But it is the truth, and we must deal with it, and we must make ourselves better. In the context of your book, how have you really linked up the effects of climate change to it? Because, of course, with everything becoming harsher and more tangible in our everyday lives. What are your suggestions in terms of how we need to adjust?
Well, I think that when we look at the truth, look at it in the eye, it's and look at the data that shows where we stand, it brings a little bit of calm that at least we know this is where we are. Now,
Yeah,
the challenges in general for Pakistan, these are not challenges that in other countries have not solved.
yeah,
Fixing the
yeah,
education sector, making sure there's healthcare for everyone so that they don't fall deeper into poverty, they go up. Creating new jobs. These are not challenges that we are facing first time in the world. So there is hope. Many countries are keen to help us as well. So I think looking the truth and the reality in the eye gives you calm that look, here's where we are. I've tried to bring in as many examples of other countries to show it can happen, it can be done. And many countries have done it. Now, in terms of the impacts of climate change, I really feel that with 37% of our population linked to agriculture, and agriculture being one of the sectors that in this phase of our country's life, which it has the capability and potential to give us growth. Maybe in 20 years' time, if we have developed, inshallah, our agriculture sector, maybe the long-term growth can come from many other sectors, not agriculture. But right now, agriculture can. And the impacts of climate change are internal to what happens in agriculture as part of its business model on a daily basis. So I think I mentioned earlier about making sure our seed sector and seed legislation and policies and regulations are such that competent companies can come and do business confidently and deliver the best seed to our farmers. I mean, that's something that's quite well understood how it can be done. And many companies in the country are happy to step forward if the regulations can be changed to make them more private sector friendly and protecting the intellectual property. I'll
Kazim
mention
Saab,
crop insurance
apologies.
again.
I think we'll have to kind of stop here. We're going a little over
Sure.
time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. I think the tagline
Thank
here
you.
is that you look the future in the eye and join more ventures such as the Pakistan Agricultural Coalition to do some great work. We're so proud that you're doing, and inshallah, I hope that you keep your energies alive and more people can join you. You already have the best institutions in the country by your side. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. Signing off the last call.